Hello, internet friends. Welcome to the stream. I was wondering what this was. It was the microphone that was in the way. Welcome to a Sunday stream. Haven't done a stream in a while, so I figure I'd come and hang out with you guys for a little bit. Let me know if the audio is good and all that. Also, I have subscribers mode turned on for the chat. So if you would like to chat in the comment section, make sure you're subscribed. So that's how that works. All right. So this is going to be a personality type Q&A. Basically, you guys can comment with hello, Matt Holmes. Yeah, put your questions in the chat and I'll get to as many as I can. If all else fails, what's up, emailed? I do have one of my famous games. We have Hot Seat in the works this evening. So we can play this at some point if we need to. All right. So again, we're on subscriber mode for the chat. If you haven't subscribed to this channel and you're watching, well, I mean, hey, subscribe and then you can enjoy the conversation with us. So, hey, friends. Long time no speak, it seems. Indy's here. He says hello. I don't know what part of the world you're in right now, but where I am, it's cold, and it's not usually this cold. So that is... Thank you, Guru Mac. That is why I'm wearing a hat and other warm clothing. So if you guys have a question, drop it in the chat as it relates to personality type. I mean, I need something to get us going here, folks. All right. Thank you. Emails to the rescue. How do I make the combo of glasses and hat look good? Where they're not supposed to go well together at all. Well, you know what? It's been a hard process because sometimes you wear a hat and it pushes down on the glasses and it pushes down your ears and your ears hurt. So that's been a problem. But then I realized if I put my glasses up on a slight angle and then kind of stick them in between the hat and my skin so they're not pushing down on my ears, it doesn't hurt nearly as bad. So it's actually quite comfortable. All right. We're looking for personality type questions, but until we get some, let's see. Let's get some good questions in here. Let's see. Ray says, hello, friends. INFP man in love with INTJ woman, help. Well, can you be more specific with the kind of help you need? Because I'd be happy to answer, but where do you need help the most? Are you guys in a relationship? Are you just talking? Do they know that you exist? These are starting questions. Hey, Joseph. Nick says, Ray, run. Okay, so what's the difference between an ESFP and an INFJ? Well, we have one completely different function axis. So the FITE axis is present in the ESFP, but not in the INFJ. So the feeling function is inherently different. And the way that person experiences the spectrum of emotion is either very subjective for FI or it's very objective, which is the FE version for the INFJ. So I would say if you're coming across an ESFP and an INFJ in the wilderness, the biggest identifier is going to be that first function and how it's interacting with that person. So if you are encountering an alleged ESFP, right, You should be hearing a lot of sensory talk, as in when that person's speaking, you should be able to kind of paint a picture in your head very clearly of what they're saying because it's referencing reality. If the person is N dominant, especially NI dominant or any dominant, you will hear what they're saying. Depending on your own functions, it may or may not be understood. But will you be able to clearly picture what they're talking about? If they're N dominant, usually not. It's usually going to be they're talking about concepts, they're talking about abstractions, they're talking about something that's like this, but like whatever this is not usually clearly defined. So those are some differences you should be able to see just because of that first function. All right. You're thinking of starting a business and you might need to use my site. Well, we would love to have you come on Snug. I use it every single day. Well, not every single day, but every day that I take sessions, I use it. So, I mean, yes, it's my site, but it also works functionally, which is one of the reasons why it was created. So, uh, love is expressed both ways, but a complete situationship. Gotcha. So there is no actual relationship as it stands now. You're an INFP. You guys both have FI, so the FI is going to be very personal to both of you. Um, where do you want to take it, Ray? Let's continue the conversation. What is your objective with this other person? Do you want to be in a relationship? What's the next level? Where are you trying to take it? So, you'll ask them via email in a month or two. All right, Joseph, I'll be looking forward to that email. Um, what are your top 3 MBTI types for falling in love? So top 3 MBTI types for falling in love, as in like they easily fall in love? Is this like a question of what types tend to fall the fastest and the hardest? Um, if that is the question, then I would say probably like the FI DOMs, like the INFPs, ISFPs, even like the ENFPs, ESFPs, uh, because when you say falling in love, it's going to be very personal versus just like general attraction, which I think you'll find more off the bat with FE, kind of in general, until they kind of narrow in with their TI. Um, so let's see. Do I think that Dave and Shan are going to change the world with their information or what? I think that the information from ops will get integrated in the greater web that is where our intelligence is going. And will it in particular change the world? I don't think so, but I think on a small scale, it will disseminate. And then those understandings will then be applied to other things. So I think it's a seed that will grow over time, but it will have, I believe it will have impact. And I believe that it could actually work in some of the ways we might use artificial intelligence in the future from like a modeling standpoint as it relates to people. So let's see. What are my interests currently? Well, typology is always an underlying interest. Another constant underlying interest is like food, biochemistry, nutrition. That's always been like a long-standing interest throughout my life, like since I was, I don't know, 12. But then also recently poker. I love to play poker, and I've recently gone into chess. I'm terrible, absolutely terrible chess player. I mean, I'm not the worst, but I'm really enjoying like getting into it more. But I do love playing poker. So you have poker, which is the incomplete information game, and then you have chess, which is the complete information game. So they're both very fun, both very different games, but both the players kind of like to jump back and forth, I found. So do I think Elon Musk is an INTJ? No, I don't. I think he in ops we've typed him as TISI, so he's an INTP jumper. So I agree with that typing of him. Let's see. She gives you more than most attention, but it's inconsistent. So again, Ray. Oh, I did. You desire her to be your wife. Okay. But fear it's not possible. I believe she's dominated by fearful avoidance. Okay. Well, you know, before you get to wife, you have to get to close friend, you have to get to girlfriend potentially. Um, so, on the route to that, um, I would say most importantly, are you doing what's important for you to be doing in your life at this time? And then does that person then work with the things that you need to do to make your own self successful? Because if the other person is a distraction, if it's kind of just like some some goal or something in your life that's not really fully benefiting you in terms of where you need to be spending your time, spend your time doing what you need to do for yourself first to grow as a person, become a better human, and then if they are the right person, they will integrate in that life with you in a more seamless way. Trying to force anything is going to feel like you're forcing something if you're not acting in accordance to where your path needs to currently go. So that's just one thing I would think about. I guess it's kind of a general rule for all, not specifically. But if she's an INTJ, she's gonna think the same thing. So there you go. Let's see. You've recently discovered my channel and wonder what motivates me to play this social game. Try to pursue an activity that requires FE as a thinking type, besides potential financial gain. So, the social game. To be honest, I feel like I haven't really been able to wrap my head around that, even though I've tried doing it until more recently, and it was actually through playing poker because I had this really weird mental block in the beginning when I would, I sit down at a poker table and, you have all people, shapes and sizes and ages. And, there'd be some grandpa sitting across the table from me. And I'd end up taking all his money and I felt bad. I felt bad because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm just a better player. Like I understand the game better. I know what you're supposed to be doing better. And like I felt bad. There's my FI chiming in. But what I realized was, the guy whips out another $200 or whatever it is and, continues to play. And I'm just like, well, they just keep playing, like what's going on? Why would you continue to do something that you're losing at? And it took me a while to realize, but then it finally clicked with me that like I was basing the value of the situation on the transactions, which were, the finance of the money being passed around, and then also of the ability to level up in skill, which is the game, right? So to me, the value was like being the best at the game, knowing the game better than other people, and then also being able to win hands. I realized for some other people there, the value of the situation was social. It was to be able to go somewhere, to be able to sit down with a bunch of people and play a game. And that is what they were paying for. They weren't paying to win. They weren't paying there. They weren't going there with the intent to necessarily be a winner. And once I realized that I was putting my judgment of what I thought was the value of the situation on someone else, I was projecting that. Um, I realized I was just seeing the whole social game wrong. And so now I start to look at situations as if, like, in a particular situation, what is this person actually like? Where are they getting value out of this? Is this just for entertainment? I have my own bias of looking at everything in strategy, right? So I'm like, someone isn't approaching this with a strategy. Like, why are they here? you know, it's just like, oh, they're here because they want to have fun. They want to be entertained. And then that allowed me to kind of like loosen up and take away my own biases, which were blocking me from really being able to be in a conversation with someone or being able to be more social, because I was just almost like perplexed and disturbed by the situation as a whole, that someone could do something so poorly but still want to do it more. So that is my roundabout answer on FE as a thinking type in the social game. The social game is what brings value to people. People are not looking through your lens of necessarily strategy or um, perspective, but entertainment vibe in itself is often the value. So, hey, Pedro, what's up? Let's see. Nice, Joseph. We have similar interests. All in. Let's see. Oh, thank you. The design behind me. These are actually soundproofing panels that I put up with a lot of care, and it took me a while to get what I want it to look like, but there it is. Let's see. So Nick says paying for company is just the way it is. Oh, you're a developer too. Okay. Yeah, therapy. You got it. Hello. Yes, I am alive. Yeah, like one last thing on the social component of FE. I also realized like how closed off I was because I was so uncomfortable at the end of the day with like the small talk, the like the this and that, because I was always looking at everything as like, what is the purpose in saying this? What is the purpose in these words coming out of my mouth? Right? Do I have anything relevant to contribute? And if I don't have anything relevant to contribute, then it's almost as if like I shouldn't be talking, which I don't. But then I realized again, the poker table was a very big learning social experience for me because what it really changed was my ability to be like, hey, yeah, that thing, whatever. Sports, I don't know. Who cares? Like, and I was just more comfortable with the fact that I didn't have to really contribute anything significantly if I was asked a question or, someone said something. So instead of being like closed off in my little box and like not talking to anyone, just being kind of weird at the end of the day, my growth area has been to be able to give a little this and a that and kind of flow with the gel of the social layer, I guess you could say, within a particular context a lot easier. It feels more comfortable now than it has before. So that's good stuff. Um, any tips for studying theoretical subjects? I guess let's see. Depends kind of like what theoretical subjects are you talking about? What's your goal with them? Um, yeah, let me know. Give you a little more information on that context. What do you think an INTP can do to improve their TE? That's a good question. Um, so it's very hard for us to use our introverted functions to then like force them into an extroverted view because like they are in their very nature not um focus that way directionally. So what I say is like use the temperature gauge of your extroverted function and then apply that to your introverted function. So for like the FT axis. So what I mean by that is if you're an INTP and you want to be better at TE, you have a temperature gauge that relates to the outside world as it relates to FE. So I want you to just take that component, okay? And then I want you to use your T, which you're already using all the time, right? So when I say temperature gauge, you ever walk into a room and something's going on and a person is there and they make something really awkward and everyone's like cringe, like God, get this guy out of here, like that feeling you get when you're like, there's something off in the equilibrium outside of me. There's some kind of component that is happening outside here in the world that is like disturbing the flow. That is what the extroverted functions are constantly measuring in terms of a gauge. And so having FE, right, you're going to measure the gauge or the spectrum of value and how value is held to people. And then, so using that meter, that temperature meter, then apply that to the T. So, what TE is doing all the time is saying, out of all this stuff out here that exists in the world, what's working and what's not working? That could be a person, it could be an object, it could be a whatever it is. Is everything working so there's no disturbances? We can kind of like keep this process going, That's what TE is looking to do. So I would say use your temperature gauge and then use your thinking function as you always are, so that you're actually looking outside of yourself first, but then applying the T. Uh, what's up, Taylor? Um, all right. Yeah, you know that feeling. I know. It's like for me, it's very off-putting. I know that some people actually kind of like the feeling of like that cringe factor, or if you ever watch like the prank videos, I can't sit through them. It's like it's too painful on the inside for me to watch like the really awkward pranks and like people in public. I'm just like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I wasn't there. Cringe is the zest of social interactions. That's actually pretty spot on. And that would come from like a TIFE user. Do you ever find yourself frustrated after using FE and the feedback is still negative and like, oh, I should have just been myself from the beginning. Now I feel like I've betrayed myself. So I think what for myself, like what I've gotten more comfortable doing is not necessarily using the FE. I've learned how to respect FE more and like respect it in a more authentic way. Like back in the day, I wanted to get better at FE because I wanted to have it as like a TE tool in my tool bag and be like whip it out and be like, aha, I can FE it just as better as you can, whatever, you know? Uh, but what I realized is that that's just I'm just wanting to TE my way to FE, and it doesn't work that way. So I started to see what FE was actually doing. I started to actually respect the function and see some of its nuance as it existed in the world. And then I started to be more accepting of using my F function in types of social situations and being myself. You know, I'm like, I love dad jokes. I'm a total cornball, you know, like I just like, and the thing is like that could be either cool or not cool or whatever, but either way you look at it, like that's who I am. And so allowing that person to be free to, again, I'm not contributing anything of significance in terms of what I think is significant, right? But it's socially significant. So where I was holding back myself, my own identity in the past, because it's not relevant, I realized that that doesn't really matter, and I can come out with my FI and be myself, um, and contribute to the social viscosity of a particular situation. All right. Uh, Not wanting to talk unless it has a purpose seems very NI related. NI has signal. NE has no signal to speak of. Um, yeah, yeah, the NI is like it's always the narrowed down version of everything. So it's like before it can come out of my mouth, it's already narrowed down. So it usually just it can narrow its way down to extinction in terms of is it significant at all? Definitely not. But that's also because it's using my TE function to make that decision. If I had an FE function, if I was like an INFJ, it would I would narrow down very differently in social situations. So things that weren't relevant to maybe bring up or say, an FE user would be like, this has relevance because it contributes to the chemistry of the situation. So um, let's take a drink of this energy drink. Mm. If I don't drink, well, this is like the most I've talked in several days. So um, I will like lose my voice after after not too long. So okay. I have an INTP coworker, and he is sometimes so mean when he wants to express his thoughts. How is it possible to resolve these situations? He corrects others, and they are afraid to speak with him. The scary INTP. Um, let's see. So this is the truth, Nick, is that nothing you say or do is really going to change his behavior. The only thing you can maybe do is scare him by saying that, like, hey, people are afraid of you and don't want to be around you because of how you've responded. that could maybe freak him out a little bit, enough to kind of tone dial it back. But the chances are that he's just gonna have to get his ass kicked by the tribe a few times by, him doing what he's doing as a pattern, and then one day someone's gonna retaliate and, really hurt the INTP's feelings and really, wanna make them curl up in a little hole for a while, and then eventually reemerge. And the thing is like you can only berate the tribe with your TI for so long until there is an eventual retaliation. And when that happens, it helps again people who have that extroverted function low, especially like an FE or a TE low, they're not taking the temperature gauge of what's happening for FE in this social chemistry context. And so if you're not testing the meter, if you're not feeling the temperature regularly, you're going to totally miss it when people are like steaming to the very top. And so, yeah, he's just going to have to experience the tribe wrath and adjust accordingly. Thank you for, I think social viscosity is a great word as well, phrase, whatever. Um, you're trying to become aware when I'm using different functions so you can more clearly have a reference in reality. Uh, gosh. So become aware when you're using certain functions. This is like a pattern picking up thing. The best way that I would do it is watching videos of people who have been like officially typed, um, who like it's very solidified like what their type is, and watching what they're doing all of the time. And then you will start to pick up the patterns of those tendencies of those functions. Like, so for instance, I was studying SI, and there's a girl on YouTube, Kit Fife. She has a channel that's on organizing closets and stuff like that, right? And so, in studying her type and studying an SI, I started to watch, watch hours and hours of her. And I'm like, what is she doing? How is her brain like making the decisions? How is she firing? What is the firing sequence in her brain that's getting her to behave in the way that she does, right? A behavior doesn't determine a type, your cognition does, but behaviors will have a certain result of particular cognitive flows over time if you're looking for a pattern. And so when I was observing her, I was like, wow, so much responsibility to reality and so much responsibility to being personally invested in how those interactions with reality are happening and the results that are happening as a result of that. So she was like a great one. So that's what I would say is to my tip to seeing it in your own life would be to watch it in other people's lives through video or whatever, and pick up the patterns first there. So, okay. You notice that INTP men tend to be more stuck in their than INTP women. Actually, I've seen that too. I think there's like some probably added pressure for women to dial their TI back sometimes. But I've spoken to both INTP men and women who have been typed, and it depends. But yeah, I've seen some of the INTP women kind of like it's less chubby sometimes. Let's see. Yeah, you're right, Jordan. Small talk can be kind of like the vehicle to a more meaningful conversation. Um, it can also be like it also can serve. It also is its own service. That's what I've realized too. Is that because it's like at the end of the day, like, yeah, I hate small talk. I think a lot of people do hate small talk. I think most people do hate small talk, but I think that some people are more in tune with the fact that it has social relevance and it adds something to that social climate, right? And they respect that, and it does work. You see, that's the thing where my TE does have to get on board is because I'm like, whatever they're doing, yeah, everyone is kind of in a better mood now, and it is kind of working. And like Now this person kind of opened up and, is like feeling better about a situation. So it's like I have to TE respect the fact again that the temperature gauge, like that's my temperature gauge. I'm like, well, the temperature gauge is actually more neutral now because someone is willing to do something that I'm not willing to do. Um, and so I can really appreciate that and respect that and then see its value and then also, have become more comfortable with assimilating into that kind of a situation. What is a healthy, cheap breakfast you recommend? I recommend oatmeal, but like the non like little packet kind, like just like the regular like, thing of oats, and then either like dried blueberries or dried chopped dates, and then you put it together in a cup with water, and then you heat it up for very quick, and then it's. I mean, I'm happy eating that every day. So, have I ever been engaged in activities, hobbies that were SE heavy? Yes, I have. Um, and I would say that they're everything that you do in a lot of ways can be interpreted as SE heavy during its initial experiences, like during its like the first time you're doing it. But at some point, depending on its frequency, it can really be narrowed down in terms of like its newness. So anything that I've done that has been more SE heavy, the only way I've been able to be successful at it is if I do it for a long, long time. And I think that is kind of the key for anyone with like an intuitive function or have an eye over SE to like get better at SE. It's like I'm still not going to be good on the day to day SE stuff. Like, like I'm still like never like throwing the trash in the trash can. And it's always missing. Like, and I'm okay with that, right? I'm always accidentally spilling stuff all over the place. I'm like tripping over. The other day I hit my head so hard on a bottom of a cabinet thing, I split my head right open. There was blood everywhere, okay? So, like, that's always gonna be a part of my life. I accept that. In terms of, like, the SE heavy activities, well, those aren't easy either. I don't think they're easy for anyone when you first start it, right? SE dominant people are more willing to go into those kinds of situations and be like, "Let's give it a go," where the ends are a little bit more hesitant, but what I do have to my advantage is if I do anything, I stick with it, like, if I've decided I wanna be invested in something, I do it for a long period of time. I have no problem with consistency, and so, doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, then you do get better at it. So, that's what, I think the question was like, yeah, have I done things that are SE heavy? Yeah, I was on a swim team when I was younger, which I hated, but my parents made me do it. Um, and then I did, the aerial silks, which was really fun. I did that for, like, a long time too, but it was just the repetition over and over and over again. So, let's see. Oh, I love the orgain protein as well. Big fan. Um, Fe would be the INTJ's most suppressed function. Hmm. Yep. Yeah, I like the kind of like the socionics map of like the functions, like looking at all eight. Because the thing is like all eight functions are very real. And there are some functions that you just have like you have access to, you have kind of like poor access to, like your lower functions, like for me, like that's the FI and SC. And then you have like the other four functions that you really don't have access to, but like they're kind of like farther in distance from one from the other. So like for instance, I do feel like it's easier for me to like simulate NE than it is to SI. Like SI is just like whatever. um so but like I can vibe more easily with like NE perhaps, whereas like well, SI you can't really vibe with anyway, so that's not the best not best way to say it, but yeah, I like looking at all eight functions. Hey friends, glad everyone's kind of tuning in and hanging out. Um What do I think NI is or how to relate to it? I mean, I have a few videos on NI where I talk about it more because I've had to really, it's like one of those things that it's like, if you ask a kid, like, how are they breathing all the time? It's just like, I don't know, like, I'm just breathing. Like, what do you mean, how am I breathing? And so like, NI was one of those things that it's like, I was doing it all the time, and then I had to, like, wrap my head around what that actually was by looking through the lens of other people and seeing, like, where those differences actually were with how I'm viewing the world and how I'm attacking the world from a cognitive perspective versus how other people are attacking the world in a cognitive perspective. So, um, I always say, like, NI is like a filing cabinet that exists in your mind, and pieces of data are going to particular files at different points of the day. And you might not even have like conscious recognition of what those files even are. They're just being placed. And it seems like unrelated pieces of information or informata, that's my new word, information or data. And at some point, like all of a sudden it's gonna be like, it'll hit you in the face of the like, there's a file that is complete and I understand something, and I might not be able to tell you why or how I completely understand it, but like this concept has formed a whole. Like this file is complete, and now I can use this on a multitude of different things because it is not a singular thing. It's not like a relative object. It's a perspective. It's a way of seeing something, and then that can be applied to different kinds of sensory, different kinds of situations. And it's just so how the brain is processing and organizing abstract and real data. So, informata sounds dope, right? I think it's like that sounds like uh, it sounds like okay, like it's like the band that's opening for Muse is like informata. um Dominant functions are more than natural and people are they don't recognize it that they're amazing. Yeah, it's our dominant functions are just like we're breathing air, you know. What we notice is our we notice it's almost like we'll notice ourselves like tripping over our lower functions, and then it's like because you're kind of sloppy with it, um you kind of have more attention on it and you're like, I can get better at that thing. And then that's where that whole peacocking vibe comes from when you're like, you're tripping over your lower functions and you're like, oh crap. Like your instincts programming is saying, hey, get better at those because you suck at them. And so now it has some level of your attention. Whereas your dominant functions, they don't need your attention. Like that is your attention. And so your lower functions will get like some focus put on them over time, right? If you stumble over your lower functions long enough, which just is, if you're within the ages of 25 to 45, you're falling all over them usually. Um, and so once you get to that point, then they have your attention. You try to work on them, you fail. You try to improve things, you fail. You look like a weirdo. But then at some point, you start to realize a better way that resonates with you of how to flex them in a respectful manner, in a less disrespectful manner. Do I know any good reads to that touch on the philosophical dichotomy between abstract and concrete? Um, I mean, I would just say Young really like talks about all this stuff beautifully. Like, I know, like, he's the guy, he's the he's the king at the top of the mountain as it refers to type, but there's a reason why. Like, if you get into more of his works outside just talking about the functions, but, like, he talks about, he talks about things from, like, how do we see abstract, how do we see concrete, but he's written so much, and I would say before, like, you fall down any other rabbit holes, like, read as much of Jung's work as you can, and, um, and then take it from there. I'll go back to his stuff and I'll reread it and reread it and reread it, and I feel like I'm pulling out new little gem nuggets every single time I do, so. Oh, yeah. Joseph said, "Same thing with the 7th function for me." It's like, "That's a thing? People do that?" Yeah, that's how I felt too. I was like at some point, it kinda hits you, you're like, "Oh, that's a thing." Like, people do that, and it almost seems fake. It's almost like, "That can't be real." But then you notice after a period of time, you're like, "No, it's real." I remember arguing I think I said this one other time before, but I remember arguing with this girl one time over the fact that people notice each other's nail polish, and I was like, "People don't do that." Like, people don't pay attention to their other people's nails, fingernails. I was like, "No one looks at your nails." And I was, like, adamant on my side. I was like, "No, I'm right." I wasn't right. I just didn't pay attention to what anyone else's fingernails look like, so things you learn, right? Yeah, SI feels like boots on the ground. It does feel like boots on the ground. It also feels like, stability on the ground. Like, it's more than SE. SE can get the work done, but SI does the work with precision. And so, SI, like, when I know someone is taking care of the I feel very comfortable in that situation because my brain somewhere deep down knows that, like, I'm not gonna be the one doing that most likely. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a doggy. It's Cindy. Yeah, yeah, you probably do have enough data. It's like it's at some point you have to be like, "Okay, I've learned all of this information, like, what am I doing with it? Is it just for the fact that I enjoy it and it's like a fun, like, area of study? If so, great. Just keep going for it, you know?" But if you're trying to apply it to something, there's my TE talking, then it's like, "Well, what? And is it working?" And, like, where are you trying to get to with it? I remember arguing with someone who's probably typical NT type stuff. Yeah, you're probably right. Gosh, I remember when I was especially when I was younger, the, just, like, getting such a kick out of, like, just having the most, like, fueled up argument about something that but, like, and it wasn't an argument, it was a debate, like, I was trying to, like, prove a case, and I wasn't gonna take no for an answer, you know? Um, but then I think at some point, like, the amount of energy you're able to fire into conversations like that, um I wouldn't say it dwindles, but you're definitely more selective because, gosh, like, while that can be very fun, it can also be so draining, and then it's like, "Well, now I guess we're taking a nap." MBTI helped me to get more patient with others because they don't get it, what I do and they don't get what they do. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely MBTI definitely helps just, like, with the understanding of humans, and I think it also allows you to have a greater level of, acceptance, and kind of, like, stoicism towards the human experience because, like, people can be so, like, I don't wanna say easily understood, but easily understood, um, and we make things way more complex than they need to be. We make interpersonal stuff way more complex than it needs to be. Um, but once you kind of simplify everything down to like the functions and how people see the world, it's like I may not agree with this person and what they're saying, but I understand why they see it that way, and therefore I can't really be mad at it, you know? So it's a nice way to view life because again, it's allows you to be very accepting towards people and things and how things, even things that used to, non-people related, like things that used to get me so fired up before in the past, like, now I realize them as, like, yes, that's a trigger because like, that is, like, my SE being like that is the chaos of the sensory world, and, like, it's triggering me, and I feel, like, so, like, amped up on the inside right now, but, like, that's also not real. It's just how I'm perceiving that, and I can be like, "You know what? There's other people in the world who would not have the same reaction as I'm having in this particular moment because it's my programming, and okay," and then I can kinda, like, take a step back objectively. Lately, you're focusing on action versus reaction. As an INFP, is there any advice you can share that may help identify tendencies triggers? Yeah. So for your type, um, the last thing you're going to be prioritizing is getting things to work situationally in reality, like, actually, like, putting, like, boots to the ground, pedal to the metal, but in a strategic way to, get something to work, right? So I'm sure there's lots of things in your life which you enjoy doing, that you have an opinion on, if you do like it or not, right? But the thing about kind of like getting these working systems, like a practical approach to something in reality to move forward, is like it's not can't ever be dependent on if you like it or not. Obviously, it's like you want to be true to your authentic self and your FI, but sometimes things need to work in a particular way that um, doesn't really like you just might not like it, and so the being able to respect that that is true, and then do what you want with it, right? So that doesn't mean you have to do it if you don't like it. It just means that like I respect the fact that this is how this thing works in reality, and then I can decide what I want to do with that. So it's more about playing the respect game versus like pushing you in any particular way. But if you're finding yourself disrespecting something as it relates to like like let's say you want to uh, sell little wallets that you can keep toothpicks in, right? And you like making these wallets. And the thing is like no one else really uses them or finds them practical. And so it's like, well, you may like making little wallets and you might just want to do that. But if it's like, if you want to do that as a business, it's just probably not going to work in the current market scape, you know? And so you can do whatever you want with that. You can either continue to make them or not, but it's like the respect of do I respect the fact that this is not something that's currently working? Um, and so that would kind of be the trigger slash growth area. The snarky malarkey. That's a great name. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Um, Did I have trouble processing sorry, I was, like, thinking about the word snarky malarkey for way too long, and then I was realizing I wasn't saying or reading anything. Um, did you have trouble processing your type from Dave and Shan? I got mine a couple weeks ago and was very different from them from what I expected. I was lucky enough to get myself typed pretty close to what my 512 type was with Dave and Shan. I knew I was an INFJ. I knew that I was either NIFI or NITE. I didn't know which one. I ended up watching hundreds of hours of Tai Lopez and then some other NIFI users and kind of comparing the two until I finally was like, okay, I think I'm NITE. That was my type. So like it didn't surprise me that much. It was kind of more like, okay, what do I do with this information now? Because when I got typed by David Chen, I was very new to type in general. So it was more like, okay, what do we do moving forward? So yes, Guru Mac, ISTPs do demand respect. 100%. Do you know how to pull out ISTJs from their SIFI loop if they decide to door slam you? Um, no, they have to pull themselves out of their SIFI loop. That's a very subjectively fueled loop. So the best thing that they can do for themselves is to go out and like do something in the world that's working, beneficial, user saviors. Help someone with something will kind of get them out of that, but they might just want to dwell there for a while, and it's kind of like, all right, you got to let them do what they're going to do. You can't really force anyone to do anything. If you want it to actually be successful, they have to make those realizations and those connections on their own. Uh, Guru Mac is an ISTP with Playlast. Pedro. Um, ISTP, the James Bond of MBTI. Yep. No, Joseph, I didn't get. Did I say INFJ? Gosh, did I say that? Sorry, guys. Like the whole keeping up with the words thing is a little bit slow sometimes. Um, all right. That's hilarious. I'm the same type as Tai Lopez and watching lots of his videos now. I always thought I was an INTP, and now I'm watching NIT videos, and I'm starting to see it. Yeah. Yeah, um it's kind of a pill to swallow when you're like, "Ah, dang it, I am Tai Lopez, aren't I? Crap." Uh, but, yeah, that's I think there's a level of acceptance. That is a part of, like, your own realization. You're like, "Where am I doing that all the time?" And then you start to see it, and you're like, "Oh gosh, it's worse than I thought it was." Yeah, for ISTPs are badass Lamborghini. I'm not familiar with the OCE. Oh, do you know what? Maybe I did see that once, Kevin. Um, yeah, MBTI. So I'm like, MBTI is kind of the community that fosters a lot of people who are interested in this stuff, but I wouldn't say like MBTI in itself is, I mean, pretty useless as it relates to like self-typing. Uh, you know, Carl Jung wasn't handing people a piece of paper with the test and having them, fill out 70 questions and then being like, this is your type. It was a process that was observed over time in which he was able to understand and deduce different parts of the cognitive process. And so, the way that type is studied, I really believe it is a study and it's a practice of the practitioner versus like a Hogwarts house, which is how kind of MBTI has come to be. But as I said in the beginning of the stream, it's not up for me to determine what the value is for someone else. So maybe they want it to be that way, and that provides some of the entertainment value they're looking for in that day, and that's gotta be fine. The ISTPs are congregating in the chat. Everyone watch out. Yeah, ISTPs are full of motivation. When they're fired up on something, watch out, world. So tapping into your knowledge base, have a friend, ISTJ. He has a tendency to get overwhelmed and then shuts down entirely. My guess is Demon NE, but any advice? Um, so with any IJ type, that um extroverted function on the bottom. So if he has SE at the top, you would have NE at the bottom. If you have NI at the top, you have SE at the bottom, right? So that extroverted function on the bottom. When chaos comes in that category at a particular frequency or even at all, it's an automatic trigger. Um, we are like hardwired to like prevent that from happening in a lot of different ways. So I don't want to deal with the SE. So I'm trying to figure out a way beforehand for me to weasel around having to do the SE or having to like put those things or having them come up and spring up out of nowhere. Like I want to have this situation concealed, locked in, and like the trajectory moving forward very clear, so that the SE isn't just popping up willy-nilly, like that's the trigger. So yes, that feeling of being overwhelmed is very relatable, I think, from an IJ perspective. And now shutting down entirely, that could look different for anyone. For me, it just feels like I'm like boiling from the inside out. Um, so I would say like helping that person have fun, I would say, with like since an ISTJ, like have some FI fun with a little piece of NE, with a little piece of the NE game, and like build some acceptance with the fact that this isn't scary. It isn't as triggering as I might think it is. For the demon NE person, it's just like I am allowed to be creative without it making like kind of like sense in reality. And that's okay, right? Because that's something that lives deep down inside them, but it's like very taboo. So having them build a relationship with that function that is respected in a small capacity will allow growth in a greater capacity. Yes, I said weasel around the SC. Indy, stop. Stop. Enough. Enough. Um you end up triggering your ISTJ friend. How are you triggering them is my question. You have a question for me? Have I been professionally? No, I'm not an INFJ. I'm an INTJ. If I said INFJ earlier, I apologize. There is a lot of talking and reading and words coming out at the same time. I'm an INTJ. I was typed by ops, FM, NITE, blast, play, sleep, consume, last. Oh, you've been typist. Oh my gosh. Literally, I can't read. I'm so sorry. You've been typed as an INFJ. Gosh. Um, it's like the reading and the thing is moving, and it's just like the sensor at the same time, and I'm having to talk out words. So like it's always a struggle. You don't plan 10 to 15 years in advance. Uh, okay, so there's this misconception that NI is like perfectly planned. This is where people get it wrong. People think when they're like, "Oh yes, NI DOMs have this 10-year plan," but they're thinking of plan in like this SI specific way. We're not doing that. There is no NI plan that's like, and then this exact thing will happen, and then this will happen, and then at this time, and at this date, and at this age, I will be doing blank, and then there will be this. It's like, no, that's SI, but then future oriented. What NI is doing is saying, like, I have targets, I have direction, have narrowed in areas that make sense for some particular concept. I might not know why totally yet, but I'm going down this path and this trajectory. Um, and I'm moving forward this way. I'm not going on the spectrum of SE experience because I've already narrowed in a way that I want to reach some kind of a destination. And that could exist in any kind of context too. So, may that relate to business plans that may be 10 years down the road? Sure. But it's more about the trajectory, less about the literal. It's on a schedule. We're not scheduled for 10 years, you know? We have direction that exists, and that direction, in a lot of ways, it almost feels like predetermined. And that it's like it's what fits into our own trajectory that like makes sense to us and the direction that we're going. So, um, yeah. How many people in the chat are weaseling around the SC on a regular basis? That's the question. I appreciate you too, Roxy. What up, CJ? And I is a blessing and a curse. Yep. Is it normal for INTJs not to get along with other INTJs? Um, I wouldn't say normal. I mean, at this point, I've like gotten more refined in my typing process and like how I see type. And it's almost like when I do meet another INTJ in the wild, it's almost like I feel like I've like met a family member is the best way that I could describe it. It's like if you start talking with them long enough, all of a sudden I'm just like, yeah, this is the same. And sometimes I realize like now, like if they realize it too, but I think it's just like this familiarity you can't really put your finger on. Um, when you're talking to someone of the same type as you, it's just like, gosh, why does this just like feel familiar and kind of easy? And like nothing has to be explained really. It's like everyone's just kind of happen to be on the same page about how we kind of, and then like the conversation just moves very fluidly. Um, so I would say I get along with other INTJs, like, it's like how much you really have to get along with someone is my question. But for me, it's like if it's just kind of like some sort of a conversation, it's pretty easy. Again, they kind of feel like a family member. So thanks, Roxy. I do, and it's usually in the form of an IFI loop where I don't want to T because I have to move my person. Let's see, I heard opinions that INTP actually use NI a lot. Um, so here's one for you. The extroverted functions are able to do their introverted counterpart. But it's very hard for the introverted functions to do the extroverted. So like if I have Um, let's use TE as an example. So I have TE high in my function stack, right? I can TI, right? I have NI in my function stack. Can I fake NE? Yeah, I can kind of like fake it. I can understand it. Um, but it's like I'm not generating thought in that direction because the thought, like, it comes from an extroverted spectrum first and then comes inward. So, like with my TE, I'm already out, like, I'm already facing outwards and then taking the information in. If you're on the inside first, it's like you can't look outside while you're inside, right? So, it's almost like, um, if you, okay, so you have to make sandwiches. This is your task. Um, the extroverted functions are like a loaf of bread. You have all these slices of bread. I can make sandwiches for everyone in the room, and I can make one for myself, extroverted and introverted. If I only have two slices of bread, I'm only making a sandwich for myself. I can't just make 10 sandwiches out of one sandwich, right? So if you have that extroverted function in your stack, it's much easier to do the introverted counterpart. If you have the introverted one, it's kind of like I have FI. FE is like I can understand it from an outside perspective. I can observe it. I respect it now in a way that I haven't before. But to like simulate that from like an authentic place, it's like I don't have the tangibility to grasp it because my cognition process isn't going out before it's coming in. It's inherently in first. It's subjective first. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Um, okay, Lindsay, you can have INTJ in your family. Do I consider INFJs to be the type most similar to yours or your ENTP shout out? I would say actually like the ENTPs. Like when you say similar, I resonate with any of the NT types more than any of the other types. So whether that's an INTP, ENTP, ENTJ, like NT problems at the end of the day are NT problems. And NT talk is NT talk, whether it's coming from like a TI perspective or a TE perspective. Um, NTs, we were block banging nerds, and then the SF kind of freaks us out. So, whatever direction it's coming from, I resonate with the collection of challenges and also, likes and ways we talk about stuff in the NT types in general. So, I would say they feel closer to me than the INFJs, even though the INFJs are very easy to talk to. My best friend is an INTJ. We like the same. He's more objective while I'm objective, but also flexible. We're literally brothers from another mother. Yeah, it's awesome. The insane amount of sensors being mistyped as intuitives in the MBTI community. I mean, yeah, because uh, the pattern recognition. I mean, it depends. Like, it's like where are they getting typed? Who are they getting typed by? Is it themselves? It's just like everyone wants to see themselves as the opposite. You have more awareness of the thing that you suck in most, so it makes sense. I can't be mad at it. You can make 10 super tiny sandwiches, nipple size. Very true. Indy, I'm about to kick you out of here if you keep bothering me. Okay? Future planning. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Make sure you're not using people's. The people use like the organized functions, like they mess up what the meaning is between NI and SI a lot. Like SI is the reason why you can go to any McDonald's in the US and they make the burger the same way. Like that is an SI system. It is something in reality based off prior knowledge that can be duplicated at scale because there is a particular way in the sensory to do X, Y, and Z. Um, NI is like it's not looking at the timeline. It's not looking at reality in the same way. It's trajectory. It's direction. It's how things uh, congregate into a particular path. So, how you consider INTJs to be in terms of cleaning organization relative to other types? Um, so I really identify with like the minimalism of things, which I think can be kind of NISE access related. For me, it's like if I see chaos, like it's bothersome. So like I like there to be as little stuff as possible. Yeah, just more like the absence of stuff. So I think my cleaning organization isn't really based on like SI function or like perfection as it is just like I want it to be away so that like I can not see it. FI scares you, do be cautious how you speak to them so you don't offend them. Yeah, FI can be offended sometimes by certain things. But they're just really offended when they feel like they can't be their authentic self around you. So what has been my latest thing? Probably poker, Ray. I love the game. The study of it, it's the most beautiful game in the world. Yeah, cleanliness is especially stereotyping connection with SI. Um, yeah, I would say SI people with SI have this relationship with cleanliness and organization. Not all of the time. It can be just in a particular sensory area. So it might not be cleaning and organization. However, a lot of people who are very good with cleaning organization happen to have SI. So take that for what it is. Um, but yeah, they have a very particular way about addressing reality. There's Long Guy who lives on the street. We call him Long Guy, and he not only takes care of his lawn, but he has a lawn company. And if you look inside of the trailer that his lawn company uses to go maintain other lawns, this guy's like SI Dom as far as you can go, right? Um, it is literally perfection inside of that trailer. Like there is like no dirt. It's like this is a lawn company. All of the weed whackers are like perfectly placed on the wall in the trailer. It's like you look at it, you're like, how is this possible? But it's like he has an SI system and he has made everyone adhere to that standard, you know? So it's just, I mean, it's amazing. Not how I interact with reality, but I appreciate it. Yeah, INTJs don't order possessions. It's based on frequency of use, 100%. You try to make yourself order and line stuff up, but as appropriate. Yeah, I relate to that. They may be a mess, but there's a system. Yeah. The system of I know where it is. It should be in this bucket. But that's how like if I have I place stuff in categorical buckets, literally. So as long as it's in the right categorical bucket, like we're good. Um you open up the bucket. It might not look that good, but it's in the right spot with other things that are similar. So when you say SE grip, I've heard people reference this as kind of like a more trendy, like MBTI. lingo term the kids are using. Um, Explain to me more like when you say SE grip, what you're saying, just so I can answer that question better. With SE inferior, I struggle to follow directions, see signs, navigate roundabouts. I'm driving. Do you have feminine sensory too, Vicky? It sounds like you do. Um, and family is extremely stressful. Is there a way to improve this? Gosh, drive with someone with masculine sensory or extroverted sensing. No, I feel you. It's there's a lot of sensory happening when you're driving. I wish I had a better answer for you. I just try to be as aware I can of other cars before anything else, and then people. Hopefully, I'm not the best person to ask that question to. I'm going to be totally honest. The juice box. What's up? That SI stuff sounds like a dream to me. It takes me so much work to keep things in place. Yeah. Yeah. The SI just has a way with things, you know? And it's almost like SI, it's funny because like you have the SI NE access and NE is oftentimes looked at as the creative, like artistic function. But, like, there is a level of artistic nature that I think comes from the SI/NE axis in general. If that person has SI above NE, they're taking this very precise view of reality and, like, how things are structured and organized. But, like, there's almost an art to that, you know? Like, I would say, like, that NE is still visible even through the SI, and, I can really appreciate how SI creates its systems because a lot of times, like the way that they end up working something out to be is like it is very original. It is very pure. They might have used past information on other things to kind of like develop it that way, but there is a lot of times this artistic nature to SI type things. Hold on, I'm gonna let India out the door. Okay, he was done with me. Masculine and feminine functions are used by OP. They relate to the sensory function and the extroverted decider function, which is either TE or FE. But I have, I think, a video that I made a while ago on that. But you can also check out their videos too. They talk about it. OPS. Kind of frustrated with my ISFP friend. They tossed everything around and being super messy, even for INTP standard. Oh gosh. Yeah, see, you still have SI even as an INTP, so there are gonna be, standards that you hold in the sensory differently than your, uh, SC friend. So, yeah, I don't know how to solve that one. Hopefully the battling of the sensories. Do I speak any foreign language? Not fluently. What does double observer, double decider mean? So if you are a double observer, it means you are also a single decider. So if you are a single decider, which means you have a deciding function, either T or F in the first slot, it means your observing functions, S and N, are in the middle. So you are double observing. Same goes for the other. If you are a single decider, you're also a wait, which one? Or if you're a single observer, you're also a double decider. So we have an observation function S or N first, then you have the deciding functions T and F in the middle. So when we reference double deciding or double observing, it means what you're doing without kind of like triggers related. So if you're a single decider, like whatever function you have on the bottom, that T or F on the bottom, is going to be very triggering and it's going to create a big swing for you. But if you have like if you're a single decider and you have the observer functions in the middle, S and N, you kind of have this way with things that like, things are frustrating, you figure them out, this thing broke, whatever, I can figure like you can like the conversation around things isn't like life or death. With the single observers who are good at double deciding, the single observer nature of them makes them like really weird with things. Like the information of the things and how things work or don't work, or the government, or this thing over here. um like also like if you have S high, like the N things that are lower, whether that be, oh my gosh, creepy, there's ghosts, I have NE at the bottom, or I didn't see that coming, I have NI at the bottom, right? So it's like the where are they getting stuck, right? So these single observers are getting stuck with things. The single deciders are getting stuck with self and tribe. So that's just kind of our way of identifying into categories. The single deciders, aka double observers, are the EJs and the IPs, and the single observers, aka double deciders, are the IJs and the EPs. So it's one way of splitting the board in terms of how people are seeing the world. It's a typing tool. Um, what is a stereotype about INTJs that actually does characterize you? Um, I would say very like the there's definitely a few of them. Like the deep down emotions, so like relatively unbothered on the outside, very even keeled on the outside in terms of emotions, but like the emotions lie deep down under the surface, with the FI for sure. Also just like generally kind of strategic in terms of approach of things. Um and like always looking at like the end point. It's like you have the checkmate, right? The metaphor of like the checkmate and like the INTJs and the whole chess thing, whatever. But that is kind of like we are aiming towards a target, a trajectory. And it's almost like you can't not think of the world in that way. I can't not think of the things that are coming up next, the sequence of events before like this moment. It's like it's almost not real. I see like X, Y, and Z that are coming down the line constantly. That's where my attention is. So I would say they characterize me in some way. My favorite MBTI type. Oh gosh, I can't pick. Uh, I mean, I really appreciate I hate this answer. I appreciate all the types and, like, what they bring to the table because 'cause they're so different, and they all serve a role in society that is needed. So, I can't pick just one, I'm sorry. How I relate to SI. How I relate to SI, with a lot of respect from a distance. So it's like one of those things that like I can see it being done, but also know that I'm never gonna do that. Um, I can try to simulate it in a very like in a small way, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm not default taking responsibility for it. I see you out there, I say, I see what you're doing. I love that you exist so that I don't have to play that role. Oh yeah, the introversion versus extroversion. In terms of social batteries, yeah, it does annoy me a little bit because when people are talking about introversion and extroversion, they are speaking of social introversion and social extroversion. Um, and sometimes they do and they do not align with your actual type at all. So, um, So, like, for instance, I've met very introverted EPs. Um, like even like the ENTPs sometimes you can get really introverted ENTPs because it's like you have a thinking function and then you have an abstract function which doesn't have anything to do with reality. So it's like unless they're kind of in their particular area where like they like to make a scene, it's like sometimes they're just like quiet and like to themselves and like unbothered, They're like kind of like staying out of the way of the world. Um until they get to a place where they want to make a scene, right? And so like it's like, you could type someone as like an ENTP and they're like, "Oh, well, like I'm not extroverted." It's like, yeah, there's like a lot of like not socially extroverted ENTPs out there, you know? Um, and in a lot of ways with like how an IJ deals with people, because instead of like having TI, I have TE. So the way that I'm addressing and making decisions as it relates to other humans, in a lot of ways, actually kind of seems more extroverted. Yet my cognitive process is based from the viewpoint of NI first. So um, all action comes out of result of that path. So in a social situation, I am like non-existent, I'm very, very quiet, but I can create impact in particular ways that can cause a ripple effect that is in a lot of ways very extroverted. So yeah, it's how people define things, introversion, extroversion. I just look at it as like if the world is talking about introversion and extroversion, they're talking about the social version of those words. Yeah, Joseph, if you're in the class, they have like videos on all this stuff, but it's like I don't think there's some people in the class have made indexes of the terminology. Actually, some people with SI have they filled the void, but yeah, you'd have to kind of dig those out. I know Laura from the class has definitely done some index on it. What is FI to you? How do you relate to it? How has it affected your interactions and relationships? My FI is at the core, like my very like identity. It is the lens in which I see who I am. It is very subjective. It is related to like I've always kind of seen myself as that child, as that FI from the inside, right? And that is why, like, in a lot of ways, when people have perceived me in certain ways, I feel so out of touch. I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not how I relate. Is that how I seem to the world? Like, I have this very kind of disassociative perspective on like how people see me versus like who I am. Um, and so my FI is the person who has my authentic feelings, my authentic perspective towards things in the world, and who sometimes gets to speak up about those things and who sometimes doesn't. Um, that FI is often drowned out by a larger, more rational TE, which is what is relevant based on the trajectory in which we are going, which is NI. And so my FI is this still small voice of who I am on the inside, and I love that person that I am, and, I've grown to become more comfortable with her, like, her silliness, like, her love towards things that, again, I used to, like, not speak out this stuff as much because it wasn't relevant, you know? The words, like, didn't, provide anything to a situation. They didn't give anything of significance, um, but that was coming from, like, the savior perspective, my saviors. And so, as I've learned more about the feeling functions, as I've learned more about FE, I've seen how my own relationship with my FI we talked about it in the beginning of the live stream, I'm more comfortable with letting that function out into the world, and being that person who is that authentic self. So a lot of woo woo right there. Sorry about that, guys. um, let's see. Oh, Dave talked about NI types and into conspiracy theories. Yeah, I mean, like the whole thing is it really a conspiracy theory if it's real? I think it's just like for myself at least, it's like there are certain people that certain things that people considered conspiracy theories. I'm like, no, that's just true. Like you're making it seem like, oh, it's like a big thing. Like it's like, yeah, yeah, the government does do that. So what? Like, yeah, they are. And they're going to continue to. So what's your like what's your direction then? Like where are you trying to take yourself based on that knowledge, Um the EPs will get more fired up about like don't control me, bro, like the government's doing this stuff and like over here and it's just like it's more of like a whoa, like, they're trying to control like they're afraid to control, whereas like the IGs are very at home with the control and it's like as long as I am aware of like what is happening, I'm able to make a better decision based off that information, and then I'm still in control. Do I find myself randomly having a dialogue with an imaginary person in my head? No, not really. I don't really have that auditory kind of processing. I'm seeing everything very visually in my mind. So it's like I'm seeing things play out in my head constantly, not really hearing. I'm not really arguing or talking in my head. It's more of like I'm seeing what's happening that isn't real. Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to keep up with the chat. I'm starting to lose my voice, so we're getting close to like the end of the stream. Like, okay, so like, Eric or what's his name? Snowden guy. He's a ENTP, right? And so it's like you see the whole like EP control bit going on, also related to the conspiracies and this and that, right? Um, but it's the EPs are coming from the perspective like, don't control me, don't control the information, you know? Whereas like the IGs are less concerned about that side. Again, we're stuck with things on either end of it, but the IJs are more, especially like with NI, it's like how do I leverage that which I know, and how do I always have the upper edge of that? Uh, I don't know what you guys are if you're talking about me or something else. Chess is very addicting. There's been some times recently where I'm like, I really need to edit this video, but I'm gonna play chess instead. It's very satisfying, and also it's like different than from the like the poker perspective. Like poker is like the best game as it relates to fundamentally understanding that in life, every decision you make, there is a cost associated. And that's very real in poker. And so there's so many life principles that are playing out through poker constantly. It's the most beautifully complex, psychologically advanced game there is on the planet. I have absolutely no doubt. But it's an incomplete information game and it's very, very challenging. Chess is like you can make decisions, like I mean, again, I'm still, like, newer to actually, like, having fun playing with it, but, the decisions, like, cost you less, like, even though it's like, okay, it'll, influence your ELO, but, like, I feel like I can have a little bit more fun with it. I could take it from a different perspective, and all the information's there. Um, so, yeah, but it's very fun, it's very addicting. It's like, you can't just, like, play 1 game and, like, be done. It's like play like 10 games and then be up till 3 o'clock in the morning. How do I view other INTJs? Just as I think I mentioned this earlier, but like as family, like they just kind of feel like family. Um, there's just like this yeah, I talked about that earlier. We won't go into it again. Yeah, Asperger's, autism. I mean, like the whole on like the autism test, it's like you have autism, like on the stuff online. I don't know. I don't in terms of that area of diagnosis, like, I'll leave that with the professionals. I do know that for me personally, there's a lot of overlap with what is perceived to be autistic-like tendencies and myself as my type. The validity of that and where how to interpret that is room for someone else's interpretation. I've sold you on trying poker. Yeah, it's I mean, you gotta try it. You gotta learn. It's, there is so much to continually learn and, like, level up in that applies to other areas of life, is the best way to say it. And such discipline required, it's a beautiful game. When I met an INTJ, I feel like they have cold and intimidating aura around them, like, very mysterious. What do you think about ITPs? ITPs, ISTPs, INTPs, it's like my initial impression is always like, they got a lot going on under the hood. Like, there is a lot of processing power that's being spent on something, and I don't know what it is yet. That's my initial perspective of usually, like, the TI firsts. And then you kind of get to uncover what that is. And what do you say about the INTJs? I've heard people way later down the line say that that's how they perceive me too when they first interacted with me or whatever. And to me, I'm just the little FI person on the inside. I'm like, what? That's how you perceive me? So, you learn new things as you learn them. Oh, nice, Peter. Cool. We'll get to catch up then. That'll be fun. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, Snowden did do a lot more, but he was caught with that. We typed him in one of the OP classes. Um, all right. If anyone has a few more questions, we'll answer them, and then I'm gonna wrap up this stream as she continues to drink from her energy drink. Lots of B vitamins. We like that. It's been a minute since I've done a live, Brittany. It hasn't just been you. It's definitely been a me thing. It's like it takes a lot of mental energy to do a live, and physical energy, and uh, it's hard. It's one of those things that's hard for me to plan in advance because it's like I don't want to be in a situation where I'm like, I told everyone I was going to show up, but like I am not feeling it. um, and so I try to like respect that portion of my uh, energy distribution. Because I know like there was a time in my life where I would be okay just like churning out videos on a particular cadence every Tuesday, Thursday, I think I used to do. And I see how like over time it's like you can either opt for that version, or I can remain to be still be consistent with uploading, but determine the frequency for myself based on like what is sustainable for me that period of life. So I've definitely opted for the latter. And I think that long term, that is what's going to benefit me the most. And then maybe there'll be a time where I can throttle up more. Um, but I want to be in everything I do for like the long haul, like the most sustainable version for myself, versus just for the fact of like, I have determined this to be the perfect ratio. This is what we're gonna do, you know? Like that was the younger LiJo. um Thanks, juice box. Have I ever received comments about your types, INTJs and INTPs being quite tomboyish? Is that something that bothers you? Um, I mean, I don't think so. Like particularly, I don't know if I've ever really noticed any comments about that. I see myself as like very feminine in a lot of ways. I think I can address things in a more direct way that's a little bit void of the fluffy stuff, which can come across as more masculine. But that's also masculine TE at play. But I mean, I'm just a big baby on the inside, so yeah, yeah, definitely keeping them on the shorter side is good. Awesome community. 100% agree. I love these people. Oh, I'm glad you liked the video with Shan. That was a fun one to do with her. I really feel like I got a side of Shan too that not a lot of people get out of her. Um, I don't know. I feel like we were really able to pull some good conversation out of that video in general. Um, Definitely collabs in the future. I'm not sure with who. I'm very particular with who I do videos with. I'm not like an interview channel or anything like that, but it's like if I feel like I can pull a valuable conversation. Um, if you guys have seen, I did this video with Alec Torelli, who's he's a pro poker player called The Mental Game. That is also one of my favorite interviews I've ever done because those concepts are so easily applied to life, and the conversation wasn't about poker as much as it was about mental discipline and what you're allowing to trigger you in life and how that can affect your decision making. So there's a lot of things I'll go back to in that video as well that were beneficial to me, and I think others as well. Um, yeah, no hey guys videos. Yeah, I think the female INTPs and INTJs. I mean, I think it's like definitely when we're younger, like, if you, like, looked at me compared to, like, my peer counterparts when I was, like, 12, 13, like, I was out of the loop. Just that was just NT at play, like, I didn't know, like, girls, like, did their hair, you know, like, I didn't know, like, this stuff. I just did what I did, you know, and then I started to pick up on, like, the SF part of the world, which I think did allow me to express my own FI in certain ways, which was great. But I think it's just like a slower realization of that side of the world, you know? I don't know what Quinn or Zoe 101 is. I'm sorry. I'm really bad with like shows and stuff like that. I'm probably the worst. Cool. Well, all of you who came out, thanks for hanging out with me. I enjoyed our time very much. And yeah, hang out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Hopefully it'll be sooner because this is actually quite enjoyable and fun. So, all right, guys, have a good night.